I discovered my parents used my emergency money for a luxury cruise with my golden child sister, so I cut them off forever. I'm 29, male, and grew up in a house where it felt like living in the shadow of a spotlight that was permanently fixed on my sister, 26, female. Raven was the golden child from day one, better grades, better looks, better everything, according to my parents, and better treatment. They never missed a single one of her dance recitals or academic awards. Meanwhile, I was lucky if they remembered to pick me up from soccer practice. "Your sister needs us," they'd say. "She's going places." Our house wasn't big, but somehow Raven's achievements took up all the space. Her trophies lined the mantel, while my Little League medals were tossed in a drawer somewhere. Family photos featured her center stage. I was usually half cropped out or squinting against the sun. Little things like that add up over time. I was always the rough around the edges kid, preferred working with my hands, taking things apart to see how they worked. By 14, I was fixing neighbors' lawnmowers for extra cash, while Raven was winning spelling bees and getting her picture in the local paper. Mom would rush to show visitors Raven's latest academic award, while I sat invisible in the corner. Dad would look at the engine grease under my fingernails and sigh, like I was some kind of disappointment. One time, I won first place in the school science fair with a working model engine I built from scratch. When I got home, excited to show my parents, they were too busy helping Raven practice her violin for a recital 3 weeks away. "That's nice, Nate," Mom said without even looking at my project. "Put it in your room. We need the table for Raven's sheet music." Later that week, Dad accidentally knocked over my project while moving Raven's music stand. He never even apologized, just said I should have put it somewhere safer. Yeah, because I got so much dedicated space in this house, right? High school just widened the gap. Raven was valedictorian, prom queen, student body president. The whole package. I kept my head down, joined auto shop, made decent grades but nothing spectacular, had friends, played some sports, normal teenage stuff. But at home, it was always, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" She was headed for greatness, I was just there. When I got my first job at 16, working at a local garage on weekends, my parents acted like I was throwing my life away. "You should be studying, not getting dirty under cars," Mom said. Meanwhile, Raven's part-time job as a receptionist at Dad's friend's law firm, that was building valuable connections for her future. The double standard was so obvious it was almost funny. Almost. Junior year, I saved up and bought my own beater car, a 1995 Honda Civic that needed work but had potential. I spent weeks fixing it up, felt proud of myself for the first time in ages. Dad's response? "Couldn't you have found something less junky? What will the neighbors think?" The same neighbors who regularly brought their lawn equipment for me to fix. But sure, Dad, I'm the embarrassment here. College was when the real show started. Raven got a full ride to her dream school on the East Coast. My parents threw her a massive party, invited everyone they knew, spent money we definitely didn't have on catering and decorations. When I decided to go to trade school to become a mechanic instead of wasting money on a degree I didn't want, my dad just grunted and said, "At least you'll have a job. No party, no celebration." Just the implication that I was settling for less. Trade school was actually the best decision I ever made. I thrived there, top of my class. Teachers using my work as examples. For once in my life, I was the standout, not my sister. But my parents barely acknowledged it. To them, I was the disappointment, who'd rather be under a hood than sitting in some classroom. They were too busy flying out to visit Raven twice a semester, calling her daily, sending care packages. I was 20 minutes away and lucky to get a text back. When I made the dean's list my first semester, I called home, excited to share the news. Dad answered, talked to me for maybe 30 seconds before saying, "That's great, son. By the way, Raven's on the other line. Her professor nominated her for some freshman award. Got to go, click." Just like that, my achievement meant nothing compared to Raven even being nominated for something. When we both graduated, Raven's college graduation was this whole family event. Grandparents flew in, aunts and uncles showed up, Dad rented a beach house for the weekend. My trade school graduation? They didn't even come. Raven had some summer internship presentation the same day. Priorities, right? Those years taught me something important though. I didn't need their approval. I got hired at a respected garage right out of school, put in the hours, learned the business side, started building my own life while they were still fawning over every little thing Raven did. Fast forward to our 20s, and the pattern just kept going. Raven got this corporate job with a fancy title that pays like crap, but who cares? It's still fancy. Parents bragged about it to everyone they knew. I was working 60-hour weeks, getting promotions, saving for my own shop, and my accomplishments barely registered with them. It was always, "That's nice, Nate." Did you hear Raven got another raise? When Raven got engaged to Harrison, some finance bro with family money, my parents lost their minds with excitement. The wedding was this massive affair that nearly bankrupted them. My dad actually took out a second mortgage to help pay for it. Meanwhile, they were constantly asking me for loans to cover their basic bills, claiming they were struggling financially. I know I should have seen the red flags then, but you know how it is with family. You make excuses, you want to believe the best. My path as a mechanic wasn't easy, but damn if it wasn't the only thing that ever felt right. After trade school, I started at the bottom: oil changes, tire rotations, basic stuff that any idiot could do. Made terrible money too. Barely enough to cover rent for my crappy apartment and ramen dinners. But I had a plan. I worked my ass off. Stayed late studying repair manuals. Took every certification course I could afford. My hands were constantly cracked and stained, fingernails perpetually outlined in black no matter how much I scrubbed. Some nights I'd spend hours just trying to get the grease out from under my nails, only to have them filthy again by noon the next day. But there's something about diagnosing an engine problem that no one else could fix that hits differently. That moment when a car that came in dead suddenly roars back to life because of something you did? Pure magic. My first boss was this old-timer named Frank, a technical genius but a business disaster. His shop was always on the verge of closing down, paperwork piled up everywhere, customers waiting weeks to get their bills. But the dude could diagnose an engine issue just by listening to it run. I learned everything I could from him, saved every penny. When he decided to retire at 70, I took the biggest risk of my life, got a loan, bought the place, and renamed it Nate's Auto. Cheesy as hell, but it was mine. The first year of ownership was brutal: 70-hour weeks minimum, sleeping on a cot in the office some nights when a job ran late, and I had to be back at 6 a.m. No vacations, no sick days, no margin for error. Had to rebuild Frank's customer base since half of them left when he did. Cold called local businesses for fleet maintenance contracts, offered discounts to first responders, anything to get cars in the bays. During this time, I made the mistake of asking my parents for a small loan to help with a new diagnostic machine. Big mistake, huge. Dad laughed in my face. "You want us to invest in your little hobby shop? We're saving for Raven's wedding." A wedding that was still months away but apparently more important than helping me grow a legitimate business. I swallowed my pride and got a second bank loan instead. Paid it off in 8 months, but never forgot that laugh. My sister Raven visited once during that first year. Showed up in her Lexus, wrinkling her nose at the smell of oil and brake fluid like it was toxic waste or something. "This is quaint," she said, looking around like she might catch something. "I guess it's good you found something you can do with your hands, since academics weren't your thing." She left a 20 on my workbench as a tip before driving off. The second year, I landed a contract with a local delivery company to maintain their fleet. Steady work, decent pay. Started building a reputation for honesty in an industry where customers expect to get screwed. Then, slowly, built something real, something mine. But to my family, still just Nate's little garage. Raven came by with her fiancé Harrison around this time, needed her Lexus checked before a road trip. I gave her the friends and family discount, basically just charged for parts. After I fixed it, Harrison actually seemed impressed, asked some questions about the business. Raven cut him off mid-sentence. "Come on, honey, it's just cars. Not like he's saving lives or anything important." Right in front of my employees. I stayed silent, holding back the offensive things I wanted to say. Harrison at least had the decency to look embarrassed. And then I met my wife, Grace, 27, female, at a friend's cookout. She's a kindergarten teacher, straightforward, and doesn't take nonsense from anyone. We clicked immediately. The first family dinner with her was a disaster. Raven spent the entire time talking about her fancy job, her fancy house, her fancy wedding plans. Then she turned to Grace with this fake sympathetic look. "Teaching must be so rewarding. I considered it briefly, but I just couldn't imagine surviving on that salary. Grace just smiled and said, "Yeah, we can't all marry rich." Mom nearly choked on her wine. Dad jumped in to change the subject, while Raven glared daggers. I fell in love with Grace even more that night. Every family dinner became an exercise in humiliation. Raven would ask about the little shop, emphasizing the little part like I was running a lemonade stand. Dad would chime in with helpful suggestions about how I could grow my business, as if I hadn't doubled revenue 3 years running. Mom would quickly change the subject to Raven's latest promotion or Harrison's new investment portfolio. At one particularly bad Thanksgiving, Raven brought photos of their new vacation home in Aspen. Mom passed them around, oohing over the mountain view. "Nate," Raven said, sliding a photo my way with that fake smile, "you should see the garage. It's bigger than your whole shop." Everyone laughed like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. I stood up, ready to finally tell her off after years of this nonsense. Dad immediately jumped in. "Raven's just teasing, son. Sit down, don't make a scene." Always me who had to keep the peace, never her who had to watch her mouth. Meanwhile, I'd just been certified as one of only 3 mechanics in the state qualified to work on certain rare European models. Didn't bother mentioning it. What was the point? Last time I shared good news about the shop, Raven had said, "That's cute. Harrison's company just expanded to 3 countries, and my parents had nodded along like her completely unrelated accomplishment somehow invalidated mine. Got married in a small ceremony at a local park. My parents showed up 1 hour late because Raven had some crisis they had to handle first. Turned out the crisis was that her hairstylist had canceled. Obviously more important than their son's wedding. The worst was when Grace and I announced we were saving for our first house. Raven immediately launched into a story about their second home purchase. "You should really look in better neighborhoods than you can afford," she advised us. "It's better to stretch financially than live somewhere unsafe." This from someone who'd never paid her own mortgage a day in her life. When I pointed out that we were being financially responsible, Dad said I was being too sensitive, and Mom said Raven was just trying to help. Raven never missed a chance to make snide comments about my profession. "It must be so fulfilling working with your hands all day," she'd say at family gatherings, making it sound like I was digging ditches instead of running a successful business. When I expanded to a 5-bay shop and hired 3 mechanics, Raven sent me a text. "Congrats on your little achievement. Harrison just acquired a company with 200 employees, but we're all proud of you too." That's Raven, never missing a chance to minimize any success I might have. Despite all this, I still helped my parents financially. They claimed Dad's pension wasn't enough after he retired early with back problems that never seemed to stop him from playing golf 3 times a week or renovating their basement. I sent them $600 every Friday, like clockwork, even during that first brutal year of business ownership. In my head, I still thought I had to help. I had to be a good son, because I hoped one day they would value my efforts and see me for what I am. Little did I know, it was a big mistake. The emergencies were endless, and always conveniently timed. Dad's medication right before their anniversary weekend, property taxes due the same week they bought new patio furniture. The furnace broke down in winter, requiring an emergency $1,000 transfer. Then, miraculously, Mom posted photos of them at a ski resort the following weekend. The pattern was obvious to everyone but me. Skipped my own dental work 1 year to cover their roof repair emergency. Found out later from their neighbor that no roofers had ever shown up. When I carefully asked about it, Dad said they'd found a better solution but never explained what that solution was, or offered to return the money. 1 year, I drove by their house on my birthday and saw catering vans outside. Called Mom to see what was up. "Oh, we're hosting a dinner for Raven's promotion," she said. "We would have invited you, but it's just colleagues from her office." Found out later that Harrison's parents were there, so were my cousins and my uncle. But hey, at least I got that text message saying, "HBD, son." Grace started pointing out the pattern after we moved in together. She'd notice how they only called when they needed something, how they'd ignore my texts for days, then suddenly become responsive the moment they needed cash, how every crisis seemed to coincide with some luxury purchase. "Darling, they're using you," she'd say. "Look at the evidence." But I'd make excuses. "They're getting older, times are tough, they're my parents, they wouldn't lie to me about needing help." Talk about denial. I kept a spreadsheet of all the money I sent them after the first year. It totaled over $35,000. That's a down payment on a house. That's a new work truck I desperately needed for the business. That's the wedding Grace deserved instead of our budget ceremony in the park, but I kept sending it, week after week, emergency after emergency. But then came the bomb, dropped on an ordinary Tuesday in March. I just finished a 12-hour day at the shop. Some rich asshole's car needed emergency work because apparently his inability to plan constituted my emergency. Had to cancel lunch with Grace to get it done. My back was killing me from being bent over an engine all day, my hands raw and calloused. The neighbor from next door was watering his lawn when I pulled into my driveway. He spotted me and went, "Nate, how's it going? Haven't seen your folks around lately. They enjoying that cruise with your sister?" My brain short-circuited, hands froze on the car door. What cruise? The way his smile faded told me everything. "Oh well, the Caribbean one. Your sister's been posting pictures all week. Your parents look like they're having a blast in the Bahamas." "The Bahamas, you say?" 3 days earlier, my mom had called, crying about how they couldn't afford Dad's medication, said they might not make it through the month. I'd sent them $800 instead of the usual $600 because they sounded desperate. Had to postpone buying new work boots to cover it. And now they were sipping Mai Tais in the Bahamas? I didn't immediately call them out. Part of me wanted there to be some explanation that wouldn't destroy the last shred of respect I had for my parents. When I arrived home, I pulled up Facebook on my phone. I barely used social media, too busy working. But I needed to see this for myself, and there they were. Mom in a new sundress. Dad with some fancy tropical drink that probably cost more than I make in an hour. Raven and Harrison posing on the deck of a cruise ship. All smiles, all happiness. The timestamps matched exactly when they claimed to be too sick to answer my calls. The geotags showed the Bahamas, expensive restaurants, shore excursions. They'd even gone shopping in Nassau with my emergency medicine money. I scrolled through the comment thread where Raven posted about how generous Harrison was for treating Mom and Dad to this well-deserved vacation. My parents responded with heart emojis and thanks to their thoughtful children, plural, as if I had been involved, as if I hadn't been deliberately excluded while unknowingly funding their tropical drinks. I kept digging, needed to know how deep this betrayal went. Banking records don't lie. My emergency transfer had gone through just hours before they boarded the ship, another $800 straight from my account to theirs, tagged with the memo Dad's medicine. I pulled up my text history, reread every desperate plea for help, every claim of an empty refrigerator, every guilt-inducing "we understand if you can. Help us this time," every thank you message. All lies, calculated, designed to extract maximum financial support while giving nothing in return. Grace found me sitting in the dark, scrolling through my bank statements. I showed her the pictures and told her about their desperate call just 3 days before the cruise. She didn't go for the "I told you so," even though she'd been pointing out these patterns for years. She used to tell me that my family was taking advantage of me, but I brushed it off, told her, "They're still my parents, I was a fool." She just sat quietly beside me, letting me process what I discovered. I calculated all the money I'd sent them over the past 2 years. The total hit me like a physical blow, almost $40,000. Enough for a down payment on a better house, enough for multiple vacations, enough to start the family we'd been putting off because we couldn't afford it yet. "What are you going to do?" Grace finally asked. "End it," I said. They'd had years of that from me already. The next morning, I called my shop manager and told him I'd be late. First time I'd ever done that in 3 years of owning the place. Drove straight to my parents' house. Their car was in the driveway, same as Raven's. They were back from paradise. I parked behind them, blocking them in deliberately. This wasn't going to be a quick conversation, and I didn't want them driving off to avoid it. I rang the doorbell. Finally, Dad answered in his bathrobe, coffee mug in hand. His face went pale, he knew he was busted. Mom appeared behind him. "So, how was the Bahamas?" I asked, my voice cold. "Nate, you weren't supposed to find out about that," Mom said. Not an apology, not even shame, just annoyed at being caught. 3 days ago, you called me crying for medicine money, then you went on a cruise." Before Dad could respond, Raven appeared behind them. She was staying with them, apparently. "Just perfect, the whole family reunion." "Oh look, it's the mechanic." "What's wrong, Nate? Jealous you weren't invited? Her smirk was infuriating. Always had to get her little digs in about my job. Dad didn't even try to stop her. Mom just looked at the floor. We needed a real vacation, Raven continued. Not some cheap motel trip you'd probably suggest. Besides, Harrison paid for everything important. Mom and Dad just needed some spending money. My spending money, my hard-earned dollars funding their luxury, while I worked 60-hour weeks crawling under cars and fixing engines. You wouldn't have fit in anyway, she added with a dismissive wave. It was a luxury cruise. People like us, not... Well, we wouldn't want some grease monkey with us. She gestured vaguely at my work boots and jeans, which still had a small grease stain on the right knee from yesterday. Dad actually nodded. She's right, son. It was more Harrison and Raven's crowd. You would have been uncomfortable. Well, Raven, this grease monkey has been funding your parents. And what exactly is Harrison and Raven's crowd? I asked, my voice the kind of calm that comes right before you snap someone's neck. Successful people, Raven shot back immediately. People with real careers, not just fixing cars. People who wear suits, not coveralls stained with oil. Mom finally spoke up. Nate, what Raven means is... I know exactly what she means. I cut her off, and you agree with her, don't you? Both of you do. Their silence was confirmation enough. Years of this, years of being looked down on despite working harder than any of them ever had. Despite building a successful business from nothing. Despite being the one who kept their lights on when they needed help. Why are you even here? Raven asked, crossing her arms. We don't need your little handouts. Harrison's bonus this year was probably more than you make in 5 years. Is that so? I pulled out my phone right there in front of them. Opened my banking app. Canceled every automatic payment. Blocked their accounts. The panic in their eyes was immediate. Real in a way their love for me had never been. What are you doing? Mom yelled. Cutting you off. Next time, call Harrison to pay whatever the hell you want. I'm done. You can't do that, Raven sputtered. They need that money. What about Dad's medicine? I looked at my father, still in his bathrobe, tan from his vacation. Yeah, Dad seems really sick. Must have been all that parasailing I saw in the photos. Dad started, No, don't be nasty, son. We appreciate everything you do for us. Save it. I turned to leave, done with them. This is why you'll always be nothing, Raven called after me, petty and small-minded. Harrison will help them more than you ever could. I turned back with a smirk. Good. Tell Harrison I said thanks for the bailout. The look on their faces was almost worth the $40,000 I'd wasted on them. Almost. I got in my car and drove away, leaving them standing in the doorway, Raven still yelling. My parents suddenly silent as the reality of what just happened sank in. Missed calls lit up my phone all day, texts flooded in, apologies mixed with guilt trips, classic manipulation. Dad, we made a mistake, but you're overreacting. Mom, how could you do this to your family? Raven, you're being childish and cruel. I blocked their numbers that evening. Easiest decision I'd ever made. That night, Grace and I ordered takeout and started talking about what we could do with an extra $600 plus a week. Maybe finally take that vacation we'd been putting off. Maybe look at houses in better neighborhoods, or start trying for the kid we'd been delaying because we couldn't afford it yet. For the first time in years, I felt free. No more anxiety when my phone rang. No more dread checking my bank account. No more excuses for people who saw me as nothing but a resource to exploit. Good riddance. And let me tell you, no contact was the best decision I ever made. I changed my number, blocked them on social media, and told my employees not to pass along any messages from my family. Had to be thorough about it, too. They tried showing up at the shop a few times, but my guys knew the drill. The first month was strange. I kept expecting the usual crisis calls, the guilt trips, the drama. Instead, there was just peace. I threw myself into work, expanded the shop by taking over the vacant space next door, hired 2 more mechanics, specialized in classic restorations. Turns out, when you're not constantly stressed about family drama, you make better business decisions. Who knew? My shop's revenue increased 20% over the next 3 months. Started getting contracts with some luxury car owners. Word of mouth bringing in higher-end clients. One dude with a collection of vintage Porsches became a regular, referring his rich buddies. Got to work on cars I'd only seen in magazines before. I put $600 a week, the exact amount I used to send my parents, into a separate savings account. Every time I saw that balance grow, it was a reminder of how much they'd been bleeding me dry. After just 4 months, that account had over $10,000 in it. 10 grand that would have disappeared into their bottomless pit of needs. Some extended family members tried reaching out. Aunts and uncles, suddenly concerned about the situation, blocked them too. Not interested in flying monkeys carrying messages back and forth. The real challenge was deprogramming myself from the guilt. Years of manipulation had left their mark. Sometimes I'd see something Dad would like on TV and have the automatic thought, I should tell him about that. Or I'd have a good month at the shop and think, I could send them a little extra. Had to keep reminding myself that they'd made their choice, and I'd made mine. They disrespected me, minimized my achievements, then used me, and I wasn't going to let that happen ever again. By the 3rd month of no contact, I felt like a different person, slept better, stress levels down, even lost some weight without trying. Grace said I smiled more, laughed more easily, didn't tense up every time my phone buzzed. We used some of our savings to book a weekend getaway to a lakeside cabin. Nothing fancy, just peace and quiet, simple stuff that felt like pure luxury. For the first time in my life, I was living for myself and my wife, who was my rock through all this, and it felt amazing. I even started a small side business restoring vintage motorcycles, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the time or energy for before. Turned my garage at home into a workshop, spent weekends tinkering with old Harleys and Indians, sold my first restoration for a $5,000 profit. Not life-changing money, but it was mine, every cent of it. 6 months passed, 6 months of peace. And all I thought was, damn, I should have done this years ago. 3 years after cutting contact with my family, things changed. I'd expanded my shop, now it has 9 bays and 7 mechanics working for me. Bought a beautiful house, had our first son, named him Jacob after my grandfather. The only family member who actually respected and loved me. Kids already obsessed with toy cars, must be in the genes. Grace cut back to part-time teaching so she can be with him more. We can afford it now, actually have savings, investments, and a college fund already started. Everything was perfect, but one day, my family decided to show up again. No warning, no call, just my parents standing in my shop's waiting area one Tuesday afternoon, looking haggard and desperate. Mom's eyes were puffy. She looked like she'd aged 10 years. Dad looked like hell, none of that usual arrogance he had. I nodded to my manager to take over and led them to my office, not out of courtesy, but to keep their drama away from my customers. Didn't even offer them a seat. They stood awkwardly in front of my desk while I leaned back in my chair. Mom started crying immediately, her go-to move whenever things weren't going her way. Then they dropped the shocking news apparently. Harrison had caught Raven cheating. He was divorcing her, cut her off completely, and she'd moved back home. I leaned back in my chair, waiting for the part where this became my problem. Karma's a bitch, isn't it? Cheating on the rich husband she loved to brag about? I didn't see that coming. Mom sobbed and explained how devastated Raven was. She'd lost everything, the house, the cars, her credit cards. I just asked, and? Enjoying their discomfort more than I probably should have. That's when Dad admitted they were struggling. His pension wasn't enough with Raven back home. The mortgage was 3 months behind. The utilities were about to be shut off. I stared at them, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. When I finally spoke, I could barely hold back a laugh. I want to confirm what I'm hearing, that the daughter you always preferred, who looked down on me for being a mechanic, who boasted about her rich husband, is now broke, homeless, and living with you. And you want me to bail you out? Mom pleaded that she was my sister, as if that meant something after all the crap Raven had put me through. I reminded her, that's the same sister who called me a grease monkey and said I'd never amount to anything. So, she can go to hell, along with you. Dad tried pulling out the old We're Family guilt card that had worked so many times before, adding that they were all I had. That's when I actually did laugh. The audacity of these people. I told them they were wrong. I have Grace, who actually loves me, friends who respect me, employees who look up to me, and a successful business I built without any help from you. And now I'm having a son. I opened the door and told them to get the hell out of my garage and not come back. Mom grabbed my arm, pleading, please, Nate, we have no one else to turn to. I told her that sounds like a personal problem. Maybe Raven can get a job. I hear Walmart's hiring. Their faces looked genuinely shocked. They'd never imagined I'd actually refuse, had never considered I might enjoy watching them squirm. The realization that I was serious, that their safety net was gone for good, hit them like a physical blow. Dad asked, "What happened to you, son?" "I grew a spine," I replied. "Now leave before I call security." A week later, Grace and I were on a plane to Hawaii. Our first real vacation together. Grace was so happy. She posted photos every day. Us on the beach, sunset dinners, snorkeling with sea turtles. She even made sure to tag my parents and Raven in all of them. I told her that was petty, but she laughed and told me it was satisfying. So that's it, Reddit. Thank you so much for making it to the end. If you're in a similar situation, know that it's okay to walk away. Standing up for yourself doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you someone who understands that real family lifts you up instead of dragging you down. My son will grow up knowing that. I'll make damn sure of it. He'll never feel less than because he chose a different path. He'll never think that being used is the same thing as being loved, and that, more than anything else, makes every hard decision worth it. Edit 1. Woke up to a ton of messages and comments. Thank you guys so much. Didn't think this would get this much attention, but look, I can't respond to everyone. But to address a few common questions. 1. No, I don't miss them. Come on, guys. 2. To the handful of people saying I'm heartless. Try being used for years and still getting disrespected and hated by the ones who are supposed to give you love unconditionally. Yeah, I don't think so. Edit 2. For those asking what Raven did over the Hawaii posts, she messaged my wife, name-calling her and telling her, "This isn't funny." Grace blocked her mid-typing.